Hey, it's Joey Balladonna here from Anthrax, and this is SAGAS.
Well, oh, oh,
Look, this is a big one.
I didn't break out during the podcast today.
It is now time for Devil's Advocate. Same time, same place, awesome. What's going on, everybody? We're back. This is Corbin, the Serpent Tongue Skipwith.
And this is Ren, the Berserker Marabou, and this is
SAGAS.
SAGAS. Nice, man. Had to do the jazz hands there. Yeah, happy days.
It's been a crazy week. We were just talking about it before we recorded. Too much stuff to even mention. But
Crazy.
We're on the map. SAGAS is on the map. Our careers are skyrocketing. So happy days for us. Just want to give a quick shout out, obviously, to Michael from Artillery for recommending this episode and for the great time we had with him last week. He was a blast and a very memorable episode, to say the least.
Yeah. What a legend.
Yes.
Like, I mean, an honor to chat to him. Super cool guy. Like, gave us one of the gave us one of the funniest stories ever. Like, but we'll probably get him to tell us that at a later date, maybe if we get him on again. But yeah, happy days.
So today we're going to be talking about if I believe 2019 album by legendary artist Devin Townsend titled Empath. Funny enough, my first experience with Devin was I didn't know I was listening to Devin Townsend when I first heard him, because I was really into strapping young lads back in the day, and I didn't know that was him. So after I discovered years later that was him, I was like, oh shit, this. But yeah, that was my first experience with him. In my later years, I've obviously indulged more in his discography, and yeah. But this is my first time listening to this album.
Yeah, sick. Oh man, like it's nice thinking about, you know, when you first heard an artist. Actually, I heard of Trapping Young Lads before Devin, but I never listened to them. But then I heard this album. Sorry, not this album. The first album I ever heard. I have this lovely romantic notion of this, memory. I don't know if you remember back in the day, you'd be able to go into a record store and they'd have listening posts, and you could, you know, pick up the headphones and listen to a track. Years later, there was a resurgence of that going around where they had, like, you know, a CD scanner thing. And there was one store over here called Virgin Megastores, and I used to love going there. It was a good bit away from where I lived, but I'd always go there, and you'd have your CD and you'd scan it, and it would play like a clip of each track, and you'd be sitting there. And so I was in back in the day when there was no, you know, internet as such. You'd have to look at the albums, and you'd look at the covers, and you'd analyze them and suss it out. And I was like, Ziltoid, Devin's album Ziltoid was just this crazy alien looking dude. I was like, this looks mega. And I scanned it, and straight away I was like, holy shit. It was like, what's that old joke where there's the guy sitting in front of the speakers and he's just blown away. It was like that, you know. So ever since then, you know, and I had to try and contain myself in the store because all people around, but I was like freaking out with joy, like this sonic amazing magistry of beautifulness. I was so excited. So ever since then, I've been a massive fan of Devin. And this album in particular is quite important to me as well. It's amazing that Michael picked this one. During lockdown over here, I was stuck in the music room here, and I started listening to this album and Devin, and it was the Genesis song that really sparked off my album, second album, what was it called? Can't remember now. Solar Systems. And you know, it was really cool because when later on when radio shows over here started playing it, they were picking up on the Devin Townsend influence. Um, it's just for a musician to listen to Devin Townsend, it's like a gift. You know, the man is just the epitome of a genius. Like, you know, so it's nice that you mentioned that your first time hearing it because it sparked all that off for me. You know.
Yeah. Nah. So this album, it's talking throughout the week about it. It's just this album is it's literally lives up to the title Empath because it's absorbing all the different emotions a human being can feel and putting it into one album. And what I find interesting when I was reading about it, according to Devin, this is the one album where he wanted to be free of expectations, free of worry, free of concern what fans might think, and just make him on an album. And I mean, you hear bands decades in the past and probably decades to come, you'll hear bands go, oh, this is me on a plate, this is me on a plate, but you don't really get that oomph that they're talking about. Here, you couldn't get more Devin on an album than here. It's just, he doesn't hold back in the slightest. And talk about Genesis. That song, every time I listen to it, it gives me like goosebumps because the chorus part where he says, let there be light, let there be moon, let there be stars, and let there be you. Let there be monsters, let there be pain. Let us begin to live again. From the top to the bottom, Genesis. It's just, every time I hear that chorus, even though within the 6 minutes, it's only done like 3 times maybe, but every time it comes up, I think it's because it's used so sparingly in the 6 minutes that it gives me this extra feeling. But I mean, that's just one example of how gloriously over the top this album is. He has so many different genres, sub-genres coming into this thing that you can't pinpoint. No one can pinpoint what this album actually is. I guess you could take the easy way out and say prog metal, but this is so much more than prog. This is just, it's an emotional statement on a plate, and I honestly have never heard anything quite like this.
It's crazy, you know, because Devin's such an interesting character, you know, and to talk about the album being like, you know, self-expressive, you know, like you said, a lot of people throw that around, you know, I do it myself, but the Devin is such an interesting character, you know, he finds it hard, apparently, this is what he said, to express himself authentically as like a human on a human level, when he's, you know, conversing with people or whatever. But when he's writing music, he lets it all out. And like, that's why the songs change so much, because he's trying to actually, you know, self-actualize how he's feeling and his expressions. And he has this idea all the time of his songs where it's like a pyramid, and it's all working towards an end goal. But he's adding all these elements of how he's feeling, and he works off colors and visualization stuff, and he never knows where it's going, but it gets to the end and he's like, all right, that's how I was feeling, you know. And it's pretty cool. Like, there's a really interesting documentary. I think there's like 3 or 4 parts about this album, but he's just on the phone with his longtime friend Mike Zimmer, who's kind of been involved with like filmmaking stuff with the band. And it's really interesting to just hear Devin, like, you know, he says when he's on camera, he can't really be himself, but when he's just on the phone, you know, he gets to really express himself and throw it all out there. And it just goes to show how much this music means to him. Like, you know, he has the same kind of like what he's working towards ever since the 90s, you know. He's just trying to get better at doing that, but it's really, it's him. Like these songs, you know, let's say on this album, for example, is him and it's his feelings. And, you know, I love it. I love, like, say, we're talking about Genesis, even Castaway, the first track, you know, as it merges into Genesis, but it's like, straight off the bat, there's wind chimes, there's the ocean, there's birds singing, you know, the choir stuff on this album is just magnificent. Like he never, you know, when he's doing something, he'll do it full on and he'll make it perfect. Like it's beautiful. Like there's Caribbean and Asian and Hawaiian sounds in this, like, what is it, like a minute and a half or whatever introduction. It's just crazy. It's just like, it's just where he's at. I think that's a synopsis of the whole album, that 1 minute and whatever. And what it's quite a long album as well, isn't it? Is it like 70 something minutes or?
Yeah, I mean the last track's 22, and then there's a 11-minute track in there.
That's crazy. Like, I mean, it's just like 20-minute track, like, you know, and there's not, I don't think that anything repeats in that 20 minutes. It's just crazy, amazing stuff. Like, but yeah, Singularity, that's the last track, isn't it? But you know, I'll go more into depth on Genesis later on, because I could literally talk about that song for days, like. But he's had 23 studio albums, you know, in total over his career. That's outrageous to be able to be as creative as he is now. And he's 2 albums since this one even, doesn't he? So it's like the man's creativity, it just knows no bounds. And I can't admire him enough, you know?
You know, one thing, just to quickly go back to Strapping Young Lads, one thing that was ingrained in my memory since a teenager is and this is obviously before I knew it was Devon, but the debut album, 1995, the album title, Heavier Than a Really Heavy Thing. It's bonkers, but like, it stuck with me till now. I think about that album title. That's a great album title.
So good.
But yeah, no, so like, you know, a choir is a major thing in this album, and a place where I think it's perfectly done is the song Spirits Will Collide. I cannot tell you how much I love that track. Like, it's just, to me, it's so, you know, when people think of badass, you think of the word badass, you think of tough alpha male shit, you think of violence and alcohol and bikies. But to me, the most badass thing you can do is start a track with nothing but choir. Like, that is, like, who, you go to any tough artist and go, oh, add choirs to your songs. I guarantee you they'll be like, no, what? Devin doesn't give a fuck. He's like, you know what? Fuck the system. I'm going to do choirs as the chorus, as the start and the chorus. Like, he's just singing along with choirs, and I love it. Gives me chills listening to that song. It's so angelic. It's so harmonizing, and it gives us really like out of this world feel. And that's why I love that song. And another song that just makes me smile ear to ear. Every time I hear it, I'm just like, literally every time I hear this song, I smile ear to ear and I think, Devin, you fucking crazy legend. And that's the song Why. The song Why is just like, dude, like, he put a Disney song on a fucking Devin album. Like, that's what it's a Disney, it sounds like a song on Disney movie. And every time I hear it, I feel like dancing around, fucking, you know, just like a Disney song. It's phenomenal. And for him to have the balls to not only add choirs, but a Disney song out of nowhere, it works because it's Devin. He's one of the few artists in the world. I think the only other artist I could put in Devin's tier is the band Swans. Those are the only 2 artists I can imagine that could release an album like this and fans will go, yep, that makes sense. That's Devin. Any other album, if you release this album, I'll be like, what the fuck were you on? But if Devin released it, I'll be like, that makes sense. It's Devin. Yeah. And Swans. There's like, he's one of only 2 artists I can imagine off the top of my head that can make a statement this big and this creative, this experimental, and as a fan, I just embrace it. I go, yep, that makes sense. That's Devin. So it's just, I can't say enough for how impactful this album really is.
It's incredible that every week, you know, there was 2 things you were saying. I was nearly going to write the word "why" on a piece of paper and hold it up at the screen. but I was afraid my face would go all pink again, you know, my fucking dodgy camera. But you know, the minute you said Disney, I was like, man, we're on the same page all the time. Like the minute I heard that, it was just Walt Disney. You know, it was just like, holy shit. It's amazing. And I watched him playing that song live, and he had every single element was being performed by somebody live, and it was just magical. It's probably the most beautiful live performance I've ever seen. Um, you know, and you talk about the choirs and stuff, and the fact that he uses quite a small choir. I think there was like 6 or 8 maybe ladies singing on the choirs in this. But then, you know, he's synonymous, or not even synonymous. He's famous for um the Wall of Sound production. You know, it's what really makes him stand out. Like everything is so grandeur, everything's so big and so larger than life, and you know, from the themes to the tones to the production, it's just all these layers and layers and layers and layers, and it's so interesting watching him in the studio. Because he does what I do as well. I sit down when I'm recording vocals, which is, you don't really see that often. If I'm doing a really aggressive song, I'll stand up and I'll get really animated into it. But a lot of the time, I like to sit down, and it's really cool to see him do it, because he'd be like doing these raw, big, massive vocals, and he's just sitting down on his, you know, on his chair. It's really cool. But he does this thing where he layers and layers and layers his vocals, and he does all the panning and stuff, and you know, it's so inspirational to watch him work in the studio. But you know, you can talk about Devin, about his musicality and you know, his talents and stuff, you know, on a performance level. But the thing about Devin is he is one of the most gifted vocalists ever. I mean, his voice, even on like a technical side of things, he has like a range from like, you know, like an E2, you know, to get technical, up to like a G5, like with his fries. He's like super diverse. He's got every single style you can want in a vocalist, and he does it seamlessly in between bits. Like we've spoke about vocalists like this before, and we were lucky enough to speak to Michael last week from Artillery, who's an exceptional vocalist as well. I think it's really interesting that Michael suggested, because Devin is such an amazing vocalist. You know, I'd like to actually chat to Michael now and see how obviously Devin's inspired him with his vocals. It's you could, you know, I think he's one of the best vocalists of our generation, you know, if not the best. He's absolutely phenomenal. You know, I've seen loads of vocal coaches talking about, you know, reaction videos, and every single one of them, it's just like, this man should not be doing what he's doing. But the really interesting thing is that he goes right against technique, you know. I wouldn't recommend this to anybody, but what Devin says is he screams until he tastes blood, and then he feels like calluses form on the tears in his and then he can do it for ages. Then, you know, it's like, it just goes to show how hardcore he is. Like, it's, you know, that's not what you're supposed to be doing.
You know, it's interesting to me because Devin, you know, there are a few moments on this album which I think are lyrically simplistic, but the way Devin has a way of making anything sound, as you were pointing to, extravagant, larger than life. And for me, an example of this is the song "Hear Me." On the song "Hear Me," lyrically, it's not the most standout, and you know, the chorus is like, "The world is bleeding, and you will know why." That you got the female doing it, and then you got Devin doing it, and in his screaming way. And you know, it's pretty simplistic, but he gives it this ominous tone to the song. It's like, it's almost, it feels like a global warming, almost like a global warming vibe. It's like, you know why the world's bleeding, and then I'm sitting here listening to the song feeling bad. I'm like, do I know why? Should I know why? Like, I kind of feel bad. He's like kind of put me on the spot, but it's a 6-minute song, and that chorus, I guess you can call it a chorus, repeats quite a bit. towards the end, the middle, and the start. And so that's why I say it's not as complicated as the rest, but what he does with the instrumentation, production, how he layers that song for even a simple track is absolutely amazing. And it's a testament to how creative he can be. More is less, less is more, less is more. It's like he can turn a song like that into an extravagant piece of work without relying on too much. And to me, another thing that I found about this album, this was the first time I've actually had to focus on when a song transitions. It's hard for me to tell when a song was starting and ending. So when I was listening to this, I had to like keep checking my phone, like to see what song it's up to. Has it gone? Like sometimes I could hear the little, the obvious pause before the song, but most of the time I couldn't. And so I was getting kind of confused, like where each song is, like what song are we up to? So that was interesting because it gives such a fluency to the album. And to be honest, it is a weird OCD of mine listening to CDs back in the day, and you'd hear that pause before the next track. It always gave me a stupid OCD because like it's like kind of ruining the flow of the album. And I know it's no one's fault. That's just mechanics, but it always kind of pissed me off. I was like, why can't you put something there to flow it around? But so yeah, this is the first time since SAGAS started where I've actually had to watch out for the songs and see where it starts and ends. And one thing I'll end my point with, it's kind of off topic, but talking about the sitting down for the vocals. Did you know that when Marilyn Manson was recording his album, which I think is an underrated gem in his discography, the Eat Me, Drink Me from 2007, he actually recorded that apparently laying down on his couch because he was too depressed. Like, it's an amazing thing if that's true. But it made me think of it. But yeah, so some people have different techniques, and I guess for him, sitting down in a chair, holding a microphone, like I guess that makes sense.
Yeah, it's I always love hearing stories like that about how different approaches to stuff. But you're talking about Hear Me. It's amazing, but it's like that. A lot of Devon's tracks, especially on this album, it's the sound of, the only way I can describe it is a space miracle. If you can imagine there was like all these spaceships and everybody's flying around, and the sound of them witnessing some miraculous miracle in space. That's absurd of a description, but it just these songs are absurdly good, and the direction and everything. His vocals on this track in particular, his heavy fry screams, are just mind-blowing, like absolutely beastly. I don't know. I think he might be from a different planet. Like he just hasn't got human attributes. These things are from another level. I love at the start of that track, there's like a witchy kind of voice talking. You never know what he's going to throw in. That's the beauty of Devon. Out of nowhere, I tried to predict it. I actually played a game with myself halfway through the album. I was like, right, I'm going to predict what comes up next. And I was wrong every time. It was like, oh, it's going to go into a heavy bit here now. And I actually wrote it down, right? So for my future self to be like, yeah, you were wrong. He's going to break down into a big chunky heavy bit here. And he goes off, and all of a sudden there's, birds singing, and man, just sick. Like, the song Sprite is I love the word sprite, it's fairies and seeing like these cool things, but there's a nice story at the start of it, like this like old English man chatting away, like a fairy tale story, and then all of a sudden there's this progressive scream in the middle of it. It's just like, but it's really hopeful. It's like hopeful math metal or something. Like it's I think trying to describe Devon's music in musical terms is the wrong approach. I think you have to describe Devon's music in an emotional kind of way, like, you know, just how this part makes you feel, describing like a feeling or an emotion, or, you know, it's just, it's a journey. Like, these songs are like audible journeys, you know. If you can imagine your soul, you sit down and all of a sudden your soul is just taken on a journey, like astral projection, you know. It's what you get from these songs. But, you know, on the studio end of it, there was a really interesting approach for the drums. A long-term friend of a musician colleague, his name is Morgan. He played the drums on the majority of the tracks. And Devin describes Morgan as the best drummer he's ever seen, ever witnessed, ever worked with, ever came across. And he's absolutely phenomenal. But so with Devin, he's very much in control about what's going on. But with this process, he very much just was like, you know, he's not overly, you know, controlling when it comes to like what parts the drummers are playing. Say, for instance, like, and I love that. I do that myself. Like, you know, you want a certain sound, but you're not telling them which cymbals you want to be hitting. So his mate Morgan, he's very, very close. He's like, apparently Morgan is one of the soundest blokes as well, in the industry. So he didn't want to be telling Morgan what to do. He wanted him to just do his thing in his flow. But then there was two other drummers on the album, funny enough. Two exceptional drummers. One guy, his name was Sam, and he done all the death metal stuff on the album. And then there was another guy, I can't remember his name. I'm not even going to try to say it. It's a name, you know, us with our pronunciation. But he done all the proggy stuff on the album. So it's like these. It's just that just kind of like shows how deep thinking Devin does be with these. Like, that he has three phenomenal drummers working on the tracks, and then he had his other good friend Mike Keenely. He, as a guest guitarist, I've heard his work before, and it's absolutely sick. Really, really good guitar playing. So as good as Devin is at playing guitar, you know, he's sourcing in like other guitar players that, you know, doing some sick stuff. So, you know, the depth is in every element of this album, you know. But the artwork was very simple, you know. What do you think of the artwork?
Yeah, I think it's perfect for the message he was trying to send out, the empath vibe, because it's just blank. Plain white, words are normal, and then the rainbow colored empath, which I think, you know, I think it's kind of, because you got the blank white of like a pure soul, like just white, and then you have the different emotions that he's absorbing day to day, being an empath, if he is, which would represent the rainbow. And no, it's really cool. I love the simplicity of it, and I love how there could be tons of hidden meaning inside the album cover, possibly.
Yeah, that's the thing. I was just interested to see what you thought, because, you know, we talked about the artwork and stuff. I didn't even look into who made it, because I like to keep this one vague, you know. I love that, you know, Empath is with all the color written in it, and the rest of it's plain. So no, it's beautiful. I think it was a good choice for the album, being as wild as it is. You know, there's nothing this man can do wrong. You know, from the Devin Townsend project to the Strapping Young Lads to his solo stuff, and he's worked with Steve Vai, which you can actually hear a lot of influence guitar wise with him. You know, and now he's playing frameless guitars, and he has this really cool signature model. It looks like a spaceship, like it's absolutely sick. And he's come up with but this is the other thing, he's come up with this new design of a guitar that they're working on, and it's just called the plank. It's just like a slab of wood, you know. It's like he has this like extreme creativity direction with things, then he has this extreme subtle, you know, stripped back kind of thing, and I love that about him. There's I deviated from talking about the song Sprite. there's like a space monster vocal in there as well. Like, and there's this one lyric where he says, "Octopus lovers are brokenhearted." I was like, that's just that's mental, but it's deadly. It's like, who guys? Oh man, like he literally is a gifted individual. Who can do whatever he wants musically, but can't do everything that he wants musically because we're on Earth. I'm sure whatever planet he's actually from, they have better technology that he can do this shit. Like, but I'm just so happy that we have a man like this. And you know, he's from Canada, which is another cool thing because I've never come across anybody from Canada that isn't super cool and talented, and super sound. But yeah, 90. So he's going since the 90s. And he has his own label, Heavy Devi Records, which kind of says it all. Like, you know, he likes to just do it his way. I think he's worked in conjunction with other labels and stuff, but you know, predominantly releases with it by himself. Yeah, this is one of my favorite albums. I think it reminds me of obviously it's very different musically, but it reminds me of the first time I listened to Sergeant Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band by the Beatles. I studied that in school. That was like part of the curriculum. And we had this big song book and it went into all the deep details of it. I think that this should be on the curriculum in school, in music classes. If the kids were to break this down and work out the intricacies of this, you know, and if they were actually able to absorb it and understand it, they'd be all just gifted musicians after. You know, it's just one of those albums that I think deserves to be bigger than just, you know, a rock album or a metal album or whatever. There's something really important in the work that Devin does, and it's special. And love you, Devin.
You know, I can't help but picture in my head if hypothetically if students tried to decipher his album, they would just find like alien hieroglyphics or something in like in the blueprints itself, like alien fucking hieroglyphics. Like just in my head.
Yeah.
Like all right. So did you want to start first with the shout outs?
Yes, this week I would like to shout out. Well, I think I'll shout out Big Sean, Big OG, United Music Mafia. They're doing some really awesome stuff at the moment. One in particular thing is their new United Music Mafia fight club, and they've been working really hard on this fight promotion, and they're making some serious waves with Brandon Perry. They have a couple of really good fighters, and anybody that's into MMA, it's definitely something cool to watch because it's on the way up. And also, I'd like to shout out U-Slade, which is United Music Mafia's platform for you know, people to connect with. It's not just for musicians and artists, but it's a great place for musicians and artists to connect, and especially with United Music Mafia, all the people that are involved there. So it's a cool thing. So I reckon everybody jumps on. I like jumping on there myself every now and then and sharing stuff about the band and stuff. So it's a nice, easy, user-friendly platform as well. So highly recommend it. Up United Music Mafia.
Nice. All right. So I got a few today, as always. I swear at this point I'm gonna start adding like skip to this if you're sick of our fucking endorsements. I might do that next week. All right. So I'll start off with a new sponsorship from John Sorrell. So I forgot to talk about him last week, and I want to do it first so I don't forget. He is the owner and publisher of Morgue Rot magazine, a guy who I've been in contact with for a bit now. I used to actually do reviews for him for his magazine. He hasn't asked me in a while, but I'm still open to doing them. But anyway, a great magazine. It's physically published. It always looks sick. It's like very metal inspired, and these are the words he wanted me to say about it. Just say that the magazine is about underground metal, horror films, and visual artists. I mean, what more can you want from a magazine? It is sick. I've seen a few of them. I've written a few headlining reviews for it. It's really cool, and you can check them out if you want at Morg Rot Magazine, 3 words, and just type that on Facebook. You'll find it. Support them if you're a metalhead. If you're a fan of horror films, support them anyway. Contact them. See, if you need an album written for the magazine, featured in the magazine, give him a shout. And who knows, maybe he'll send me a shout to write the review. So who knows? I could be helping you. So that's John. Talk about our usual Zach Moonshine. Not much needs to be said about him at this point. If you know metal, you should know Zach. Congratulations to Zach for getting that Cannibal Corpse interview. That was fucking insane. Like, he is limitless. I mean, yeah, he can do no wrong at this point. His PR packages are insane. If you're a metal band, go contact him at ZACH Moonshine at, let me get my, not very prepared today, am I? No, I don't think I am. Let me bring this up. That would be ZACH at metaldevastationradio.com. I'll link it in our video below anyway. If you're a band, contact him and see what he can do for you, because I'm sure there's plenty. And if you need a testimonial, our man Ren has experience. So contact him. I'm sure he'll give you his life story. He never shuts up. He likes to talk. So go talk to him. WordPress. So I've said this for a while now. I've been using WordPress for most of this year, and it's the best decision I ever made. All the fuss over Facebook, all the drama, I don't need it, and neither does people who read my reviews. So go check over WordPress at serpenttongue94.wordpress.com. There's always 2 options: review or contact. If you want to review, contact me on my Facebook. And if you just like to read reviews, go to reviews, and I'll be posting a few every week, as I always do. And last but not least, Gas Digital Network. So if you are a fan of dark humor like we both are, that is a platform where people are allowed to say what they want when they want. And the beauty of it is, over the 15, 20 shows, there's a whole different range of topics and subject matter. It's not just all dark humor. There's music-related stuff, wrestling-related stuff. There's an amazing show called Zach and Miko's Horror Spook Show, which is amazing because it airs every Friday, I think, at midnight, and he does a live podcast watching horror movies with their fans. How sick is that? I mean, what an idea from an amazing comic. And obviously there's a Legion of Skanks, 3 very different comedians talking about the worst things you could possibly say and putting a funny take on it. That's why it's my favorite, and it's probably your new favorite too if you go check them out. Gas Digital Network. Find the cheaply monthly fee wherever you are in the world and enjoy thousands of hours of content right at the Gas Digital Network. That's me, I think. I hope I haven't forgotten anyone. Yeah. So, you know what segment it is. Time for the
Devil's Advocate. I've no instrument.
Advocate.
Yay!
I was really hoping you had an instrument prepared today. But
I know. I was like, where's my flute? Where's my harmonica? I have a Marshall can. It's as close as a Marshall amp can.
Oh man. So I'm guessing I'm starting as always.
Okay.
So this episode, I'm about to break the whole system. This is going to be a new era of SAGAS after this, because I'm about to break the whole formula. And I guarantee you, there's no way we are the same this week. If we are the same after this, I'll be shocked. So as I was talking to Ren this week, this is probably the hardest Devil's Advocate we've ever had to do. And for anyone watching at home who might be thinking, what's the big deal? You're just saying you're just picking a worst and best track. It's hard when every week you're trying to think of something bad about something you love. We're doing that every week, and it never gets easier because we don't choose bad albums. But for me, this is the hardest because, as we kept saying, this is an emotional statement. It's not about good or bad in this album. It's about what he wanted, what he visualized, what he felt, instead of a traditional album. So that would be like the equivalent of buying a cheeseburger and then taking out the lettuce and then criticizing the lettuce. It doesn't make sense. It only makes sense in the burger. You take out the lettuce means nothing. So this is really hard, but for me, I'm about to break new ground here because my best and worst song is the same song.
Whoa.
So I'm going to explain why. For me, the best and worst song is Sprite. Now, let me tell you why. The reason for the best, I can get over it no matter how many times I listen to it. I don't care what album I listen to for the rest of my life now, or albums I've heard in the past. That intro, that story with the bird, is one of the most magical things I've ever heard in my life. That is Led Zeppelin equivalent of magical. Like, I heard it and I had this feeling of happiness and magic that I just haven't heard since Led Zeppelin. And that story is so simple but so nice, and I don't know how to explain it. It's just magical, and nothing I think I'll listen to all year will top that. Like, I know this came out 2019, but I don't think anything I'll hear for a while is going to match that story. And then towards the production, the instrumentation, it's all just absolutely fucking flawless. And there's not a bad thing I can say about those things. But what makes it the worst track simultaneously, unfortunately for me, is the vocals. It's the pre-chorus vocals he does, where it just sounds very whiny in a bad, like, it sounds, the vocals, the way he's singing it, the few lines that keep repeating, it just sounds awkward. It sounds, every time I listen to it, I wanted to force myself to like it, but at the end of the day, I guess it's a good thing we chose Devil's Advocate, so I don't have to lie. It is, I don't know, the vocals are just the least, performance-wise, the least appealing on the whole album to me. I just couldn't stand the vocals, but that intro and the production and the instrumentation was just some of the most magical shit I've heard in my life musically. So that's why, for the first time ever, it is the best and worst track on the album.
And that's how we turn into a parallel universe show. Man, yeah, that's really interesting. I mean, it is a sick song, and I did mention that earlier on, and I knew when I mentioned it with the English speaking, or not English speaking, obviously it's all in English, the English sounding Englishman storytelling, I could see your face. That was like, you were loving that. Like, so yeah, it's an absolutely killer track. Like, I totally get what you're saying. I don't know. This was the worst. This was the worst Devil's Advocate attempt ever. Like, it's impossible. Like, definitely, I'll start off with, because I still don't even know if I can say I have a least favorite, but I'll talk about my favorite anyway. Genesis. Genesis is one of the most epic songs of all time, and it leads up to the most epic line at the end of the chorus, the Genesis. It's just the most epic fucking sounding thing ever, and when you get to that bit, you're just like, it's like because there's a big build up to it, and you get to this lovely big bit, and he kind of, it lingers, but the thing that really makes this song like one of my favorite songs is that it has kittens in it. There's the sound of kittens in the song, and it's just like meow, meow, meow. It's like, oh man, you gotta love it. You gotta love it. And then there's like this crazy, hopeful death metal vibe off it. It's spacey. There's a sublime mix of sound in this song. It's everything that you've ever not realized that you wanted in a song. It's just a monumental. So that's my favorite song, that I could talk about the layers of magic upon layers of magic for days and days and days. There's a disco beat 3/4 way through. It's a full-on progressive mastery. Magical was a word you used a few minutes ago. I've never thought the word magical so much listening to any piece of music in my life, and this entire album. And magical is actually quite an important element of music for me. It's not something that people talk about that much, but to have a song sound magical, it's magical. So yeah, I don't know what to say about my least favorite track. It's you know, I'll be half kind of lying here, you know, when I do decide to pick one here, because I really don't know. You know, Requiem has, it's just, I don't know, maybe Requiem or Borderlines. It's they're absolutely incredible songs. There's so much magic in Requiem. But then Borderlines has this, like, the ocean sounds with the Caribbean drums. Like, that's another thing. The Caribbean steel drums that jump in and out of this album, and trumpets and that spacey sound. I really don't know. I mean, there's a ukulele at the start of that song as well. Like, it's and a bitchin' solo. That's a couple of bitchin' bits in this album. I'm just gonna say Requiem, just because I haven't got a fucking clue what to say.
So you didn't mind the vocals and Sprite?
I, you know, I didn't really, it didn't jump out on me as something that I didn't particularly like. But then again, yeah, no, I do agree with you on that one. But yeah, I just think the rest of the song made up for any dodgy moments. But do you know what? It is like you said at the start of the Devil's Advocate. You can't really say it's my least favorite song or whatever, because these aren't songs, man. These are, like, you know, another level of consciousness just turned into audible notation. You know, it's just like outrageously gifted music. That it's flawless in many ways. The fact that the direction isn't a solid, you know, set, like that whole funnel thing, you know, that triangle thing that he's working towards. There's songs on this album that didn't make it on the album, that made it onto the bonus tracks, that are as good as any song ever. You know, he had like 30 tracks coming into this process, and one of the bonus tracks I absolutely love. I was gonna really bitch out and say one of the bonus tracks was my least favorite, but I thought, you know, that would be really weak. There's a track on this called Middle-Aged Man that I can totally relate to. It's really, really cool. But it's real rocking. It's just like, it's straightforward. But the reason why he didn't make it on the album is because he has this, it's not so much a theme, it's more like a feel, you know, and a lot of the tracks don't make them on the album are good songs. They just don't fit this coagulated emotional kind of journey, you know. So anyway, I digress. Middle-aged man.
This is good episode. So because it was meant to be my turn last week, but then obviously guests choose next album, so I'm gonna be talking. So next week I'll be talking about one of my favorite albums of the modern day, an album that I think really showcases the singer's diversity, creativity, vocal performances in spades. And interestingly enough, I think it's an album that most people would consider the downward spiral point, the start of the downward spiral for this band. But in my opinion, this album at least was their magnum opus, which any core fan of this band might give me hate for that comment, because it's not the heaviest stuff. It's one of the more mellow stuff, but I can't get enough of it, and it's going to be really hard for me to choose worst track next week. And that album, I don't know if you have heard of it, but the album by Stone Sour, Audio Secrecy.
Right.
It's their third album, I think.
Third album, right? Cool, man.
You ever heard of that band?
Bit of Corey, yeah, a bit of Corey Taylor. I don't think I know that album, but I heard their first couple of albums. So yeah, sick. Nice.
It's it's like I said, you talk to any hardcore fan, they'll probably say this was their start of their weak point. But for me, it's just phenomenal. Like, yeah. So yeah, that's the album for next week. And yeah, make sure you guys check out all the previous episodes. If you want episodes from number 1 onwards, go to YouTube. And otherwise go to Spotify. And I think we started episode 11 or something on Spotify. Just because it was easier that way. And we figured if we keep it all on YouTube, you know, some of you may not have streaming services, and we don't want you guys to suffer because of it. So fuck it, free on YouTube as well. But if you want to support us elsewhere, we're on Apple, we're on Spotify, we're pretty much on everywhere you get your podcasts. So go check it out there. Give us a download on Spotify. Give us a review and give us a comment if you have any, bad or good. We'll take it all. You know. Yeah. So do all that if you don't mind. And yeah, thanks for tuning in. And as always, as we always say, same time, same place. Awesome.
Cheers, everyone.